I'm here joined by Nina, that she already introduced how she's been part of the journey of Forto since the beginning, and she's head of sustainability. This is the only roundtable actually that the four of us are in charge of sustainability in their companies. So we're also joined by Víctor, Ortega, head of sustainability at Trucksters, who's been working in sustainability for long with KPMG in sustainability, and also with startups such as Fintonic. And we have Artur, who has a long experience in the logistics industry. He holds an MBA in logistics and supply chain management, and it's in charge of sustainability in the European region. So I'm going to start with you guys with a very ugly truth. You stand at the core of this whole hurricane. We get so many questions at CrowdFarming every day about transportation and sustainability, about local consumption. This is a topic that we discuss in our day-to-day, and it has a lot to do with what you do and why we work with some people like Trucksters and UPS. If we look at the numbers, and Nina, you have already mentioned some of this, freight transportation plays a huge role in our global economy. Billions of tons of cargo are transported every day by trucks, planes, ships, trains, everything. And they represent the 8% of global emissions globally. 11% if warehouses are also included. And while nearly around 3/4 of it is shipped through ocean, through ships, road vehicles like trucks and vans, that highly impacts, for example, the work we do at CrowdFarming, represents 62% of freight's emissions. So that is a lot, and that it's being really at the core of the whole hurricane. On top of this, we're seeing e-commerce growing, which is good news for a lot of us, for our businesses, but it might not be very good news for the emissions or for example, city transport and living in a city with a lot of traffic jams. So no matter the efforts we do to become more sustainable, traveling and even more long distances is often seen as the face of the problem of that consumerism or capitalism that we've been talking about for long. So this means we need to change something. We need to change the way we approach logistics and also the way we communicate it, right? So I would start with what are the key challenges. With a lot of these topics, we tend to talk about issues that we're going to face in 20 years, in 2050, or solutions that are super innovative. I would love to hear the challenges that you're facing today. And I guess some of this needs to do, for example, with measuring carbon emissions, with reducing them. It has to do with last mile delivery. It has to be also with social topics. And I guess Trucksters, for example, deals with this. We are seeing a lot of strikes recently with the rise of costs, for example. So what is this, and what are the solutions that you're putting to these challenges today? So don't talk to me about, we will have time for that. Don't talk to me about the solutions for 2050. What are you doing today?
Well, first of all, thank you for the event, because the place is awesome. I mean, and the last tennis match was incredible. I mean, really incredible. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Víctor.
And as Nina said, when we speak about sustainability, we usually put the focus on emissions, but the social pillar of sustainability is also important. And in our case, logistics, and especially for the road transport, maybe some of you don't know this, but when drivers have to do international transport, they usually sleep in the truck for more than 25 days per month. I mean, I slept 2 hours today and I want to kill someone. I mean, and the problem is that in Europe, especially, we have a huge shortage of drivers. And if you mix these both factors, you get that there's no one that wants to be a truck driver, especially in Spain, for example. And what we do is we try to improve the work-life conditions for these drivers. In Trucksters, that's the whole point of our company. The mission is to improve their work-life conditions. And the way we do it is through these relays that we make, so that instead of a driver going from Madrid to Germany directly and sleeping in the truck, they would go to a middle point they will swap the trailer with another driver, and they will continue, but back home, so that the trailer never stops. It's much faster than any other service, but at the same time, we improve the conditions because they can sleep at home at least twice than with any other service that we have right now for international transport.
So thank you, Victor. We have the input of a challenger that is changing kind of the status quo of how we imagine logistics. Artur, what's your view on this from someone from a company that has been here for a lot of time?
Yes, I would like to add two additional challenges. For example, how to enter to the inner cities in the most effective zero-emission way to provide, to reduce congestion in the inner cities, because we know that currently and in coming years, around 80% of population will live in the cities, right? So to operate, to serve these customers in the inner cities, so our responsibility to introduce new way of logistics, right? So the challenge is how to reducing congestion and combining with the zero emission deliveries, get with the goods to these customers, not compromising their, let's say, their needs to live in a clean city, right? That's why we are scaling up significantly our cycle logistics fleet, right? Because we see that cycles, our cargo bikes, which we want to introduce a couple of thousands in Europe in coming years, this is a good solution which can really deliver to our customers, right? So that's a challenge. That's a challenge because to operate with cycles in the cities, we need to redesign completely our supply chain currently, right? Currently, our centers are located near to the cities, right? But to get to the inner cities by cycle, so you cannot get there by cycle, right? You need to transport load packages to the inner city, to a micro hub location, and then to operate from that location by cycles. So this is completely new challenge for logistics, for operator like we, so small operator, and this is something what we are doing currently, right? To redesign our complete supply chain. So this would be a one challenge. Second challenge is coming with a current energy crisis we are facing. So here we are really testing different kind of solutions, so different kind of fuels to be precise, to really judge, assess which one will be the most fiscally responsible, the most effective for our customers. Because here is our responsibility to design and implement the most efficient supply chain for our customers, right? And also I love what Nina has on her slides. We are all in the same boat, right? So yes, this is something what we need to do together. That's why we are trialing also with several customers, and we are testing different solutions to really decide together which one will be the cleanest one and also the most efficient in terms of finances. So these two challenges among the others, to be honest.
Thank you, Victor. Artur, Nina, do you want to add on this?
Yes, maybe first of all, in general, I think like since we are such a dirty industry, and we can easily say that because we are, it's also a huge challenge, right? Because transformation doesn't happen by looking from the outside at something. It only happens if you do it from within. So we actually have the opportunity to transform this really dirty industry from within and make quite a big change. So I love a challenge. I think for us, the biggest challenges at the moment, and I said it earlier, we're currently mostly focusing on the emissions topic, but also looking at topics around human rights, biodiversity, ocean health, but at a later stage, or at an earlier stage in that sense. And when it comes to emissions, I would say the two big topics I would add, I would join in the transition to away from fossil fuels into alternative fuels, both in the shipping and aviation sector. Those are really, really crucial ones. And they're, it's not decided which technology is actually the right way to go, and this is also going to take a couple of years because it's a slow-moving industry with ship lifespans of 20 to 30 years. And then the second challenge, I would say, is in getting the data right. It's because it's such a fragmented industry with so many different players. You have to imagine when we facilitated transportation from Asia to Europe, for example, we're working with 5 to 6 different partners. Of course, we can take trade lane averages or we can take global averages to estimate the exact emissions, but it won't help us if we want to make the change and also make the change visible and tangible in order to then drive change into alternative options, for example, changing the carriage modes from truck to rail or something similar. So we need more accurate data, and for that we also need data sharing infrastructure.
To carry on from that point, Nina, how do you help? I guess it's key at the moment to have information to be able, for example, for each one of your cases. I guess I understood that some kind of data analytics is needed to join one part of the journey to another, from different drivers, to get a new whole logistic models in the last mile delivery, and this part of the information that you're talking about. And for us, for example, talking selfishly, it's very hard to get that data from the very huge part of our scope 3 emissions that it's logistics. It's super complex world that when you're not completely inside of it, it's complex to grasp all of what's happening. How are you helping your clients manage that data and actually understand the impact of their deliveries?
So we make it, I can get started if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
So for us specifically, I mean, we're operating with a part of transport that's probably the least tangible, right? The part that's like going with a ship or with a plane from one continent to another. It's not even the part that's going to the consumer, which you can somewhat imagine. So the way we do it right now is we create emissions reports for our customers. We do use averages wherever we don't have exact data, because primary data in the space at the moment are super hard to get your hands on, and sometimes they don't even exist. Sometimes large players don't want to share them yet, for whatever reason. So we try to, like wherever we can, use primary data. Sometimes there's databases, for example, for vessel-specific emissions. And then anywhere we don't have these data, we use averages derived from frameworks such as the Global Logistics Emissions Measurement Framework, the Council, like the GLEC framework. And we then basically take this data and make it on a per shipment basis for each part of the transportation that's happening. So for one of our transports, it would be the pre-carriage from China warehouse to the port in China, then from China port to a port, so let's say Shanghai port to the port in Hamburg, and then the on-carriage transportation. There might be transshipments in there, those we indicate. So we really want to help our customers understand to a super granular level, where do the emissions actually come from? And then we report basically all of these emissions on a per shipment basis, so they can start analyzing the data and understand, where do I have potential to actually
Where should I focus?
optimize?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So continuing on this, so definitely, yes, in the last couple of years, we have been observing a huge growth in a number of inquiries coming from our customers, because customers want to have more knowledge, definitely, from which source emissions are coming, right? So that's why we introduced quite recently, I think a few years ago, new set of reporting, so carbon impact analysis reports. There are several solutions available for customers, because we would need to report to our customers from which transportation mode, so emissions, significant amount of emissions is coming, so if it is ground or air, and also in that reporting, we report all 3 scopes, right? Because then our customer solutions team is sitting with our customers and analyzing these reports together to find together some solutions, how to redesign customer supply chain, right? So some customers already started also redesigning and maybe switching to the different transportation mode and using different solutions to reduce, to mitigate these emissions, right? So definitely we are also using network averages, right? Because primary data is rather not available. However, yes.
Interesting service. I'm taking notes.
Yeah. So this is in the offering. So definitely have to talk more about this.
On our side, of course, clients wants to know the data, but the problem was that we started tracking emissions, and the conclusion was that a message telling them that you're a bad guy, this is your number, but no solutions. So we decided that we stopped the effort to track emissions until we have a solution to reduce them. And in this case, I think we are going to take back, to bring back the projects of tracking emissions, but together with a solution that probably is going to be using electrics, so that they can feel that they can take action on them. It's not just for reporting, because for reporting you can just apply quick math and you will get the number, but no solution. So we are waiting for that solution.
Yeah, what I see the challenge is that there's a lot of information of calculating exactly the journey of one journey, but when you have over 1 million journeys, it becomes very different connections. It starts to get a bit messy. So it's a complex topic, and I hope we evolve really quickly on this, so I can report the emissions of Scope 3 early on.
Definitely, because reporting is coming as a first stage, right? But then
yes.
After reporting, when you understand where emissions is, then definitely.
So you mitigation. Can not focus on parts that maybe are not so impactful, and maybe focus on the ones that you can make a real change, right? Now let's dream a bit and go in the long term. What is literally the engine of the future? Because I see each person that is involved in logistics or that knows about this topic defending a very different thing. Like we see intermodal, we see HVO, we see SAF, we see electric. There's so many things. Data analytics to do more efficient journeys. What is the engine of the future? And it's every time I hear one of these solutions, it looks super expensive, and it needs systemic change. So it needs someone that it's kind of orchestrating this whole change. I guess, of course, train could be very efficient, but we need the whole Europe connected by train. So maybe it's a bit difficult to really orchestrate this on the future. So dreaming, what would be the ideal, and who is going to finance this or think about this holistically?
Well, we had a short debate before.
Bring it to the public then.
I think the conclusion was something like, did you read the book Sapiens? In which they basically say that at some point in time, the different species of humans lived at the same time. And the Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. And I think that that's going to happen with the technologies for logistics, especially if we put the focus on road transport. We are going to see hydrogen, electrics, diesel, alternative fuels all at the same time for a while, until there is going to be some winner in the long term. And that's the winner is where no one is agreeing. And my bet is electrics, but...
Your bet is on electrics.
Battery electrics, yeah.
Electrics, yeah. So definitely there is no golden solution for all transportation modes. We see that fleet electrification really works for the last mile deliveries, but here we have shorter distances, right? But and this is really our strategy, really to electrify our last mile delivery fleet. But here we are talking about distances up to 100 kilometers, right? Not longer, maybe 200 in some areas. But for the long haul transportation, this is a different challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So also we see that on some lanes, yes, we do have some electric vehicles, right, which are able to operate between cities, between countries even. However, short term, we are experimenting also with kind of bridging fuels like HVO, like renewable natural gas, because they can reduce not totally carbon dioxide emission, but even 80% as a few years period is good enough, right? So here we see that kind of bridging fuel should be used in a couple of years, but definitely we are waiting for the fleet electrification at scale also in a long-haul transportation. Hydrogen, definitely, in my personal view, this is the fuel of the future. Currently, short term, as per our discussion earlier,
Different bets.
Currently, we are really we have to use significant amount of energy to squeeze hydrogen to put it into the tank, right? So this is currently not very efficient. So we are a humanity. We are learning how to do it in the most efficient way, and also how to produce that green hydrogen, right? Because this will be in the future. Yeah, long-term hydrogen definitely. However, what I would like to say also, first question about the challenges. There is a huge challenge in terms of air aviation, right? So currently we see the only solution for aviation to reduce emissions is sustainable aviation fuel currently. But this is extremely expensive currently because it costs around 4 times more than traditional jet fuel, right? So here also would like to underline that additional support coming from governments, right, in terms of legislation, in terms of some tax credits maybe, is really needed to trigger supply and demand, right? So I would like to emphasize these solutions.
Yeah, maybe just adding, I think you mentioned intermodal, mode switch, these kind of things. These are also like parts of the solution. So, for example, switching from air freight to rail freight or to sea freight. But to be fair, also most of the times when customers transport their goods with air freight, they don't do it because they love it so much, because it's expensive as hell, frankly speaking. They do it because they have to, because the operational, like the supply chain requires it. Of course, you can go into changing the whole supply chain, but some goods, for example, especially also if we want to, that's also a debate that we can have, but philosophical again, if we still want to like have fresh food, for example, transported around the world in the time that it's still fresh, we would require still flights, or for example, also a lot of the high-tech goods, they are often transported with air freight. So mode switch like works to a certain extent. And then I would say also the whole biofuel part, both for the maritime and sustainable aviation fuel or air freight sector, is really important. Maybe quickly, what is biofuel? Is everyone aware, or should we briefly explain? Because when I started like talking and thinking about biofuel, my first reaction was, ooh, that sounds like the stuff that we had for cars like 10, 15 years ago, which were not sustainable at all, and like competing actually with food resources. But the type of biofuel that we're talking about these days is actually second and third generation biofuel. So it's basically waste fuel that's generated from used oil, cooking oil, if you will, but sometimes also residues from animal production. And that's then treated with hydrogen so that you can use it as a fuel for ships and for airplanes. And this is a necessary transitory solution because, as I mentioned earlier, ships, container ships, have a lifespan of 20 to 30 years. And we are right now at a phase where the highest amount of ships has ever been ordered in the whole industry, basically. So we will need to find a way to still fuel those ships over the next 20 to 30 years. Retrofitting might be a solution, but we probably also won't be able to do all of this. And then there's also additional solutions. I'm personally also a big hydrogen fan, and I hope we're gonna make that transition. But there's also currently different technologies being researched, such as ammonia, methanol, different bioversions, e-versions. So there's a whole lot of things going on. And I personally think we will need to stay agnostic to all of those technologies, as you said earlier, for quite some time, because we still don't know what's going to make the change.
But there will be a winner. Yeah.
Probably.
Battery electrics.
The bet is on. So I'm going to take up on that part that you didn't want to go so deep in, that it's the local consumption, or how willing are we as consumers, because as you said, all of us are consumers and part of this system, to change our habits in order to have an impact on logistics, right? So we see a rise of e-commerce, as I said before, that is great for many of us, but might be not so great for the environment. And how does this match sustainability, and are consumers willing to either in the last mile go and pick something from a center, or go walking instead of getting the logistics company going 3 times to their home? Are they willing to not have anything brought by plane by them? Are they willing to only have local consumption? Are they willing to pay more for green delivery that we see more and more? Or is it not the way? Like, is the consumer something we shouldn't be working with because it's maybe left to the e-commerce and they should live with that reality? And how are you advising this in that case to your clients? Big question.
Such a big topic.
So let me start. So in my opinion, definitely end consumer is setting the rules, right? So end consumer is deciding which solution will be chosen and so on. And recently we have been observing that really level of consciousness in terms of environmental negative effects of carbon dioxide and etc. So consumers are more knowledgeable, yeah? And also we see that our customers, they see a sustainability as a next layer of competition, yeah? So we see also that our customers tends to introduce in their shopping baskets, in their selling platforms, more sustainability related solutions to attract end consumers. And yes, end consumers currently are more willing to pay €1 more for a more sustainable transportation if they are really convinced that it will be done in much better way for the environment, right? So we are observing that mind shift is being done. It is progressing. It's not the fast piece, definitely, but it is coming.
I guess if they are more aware, it's the responsibility when we give them the choice to give them the information to choose, and for that we need the information. So we need to become more knowledgeable on the impact of each one of those shipments, right? So in the end, we need a lot of information to go down the line, right?
I would say also that that's only for some people and specific cases, but if we want a systemic change, we have to work so that our products and services are at least as good as non-sustainable products and services, at least not with a higher cost, if we want systemic changes.
I would also say, like, do we have to work with the consumers? Yes, absolutely. If you ask me, and this is my personal opinion, I think we all have to adapt our behavior. I think we have to. I'm not saying I personally believe sustainability should not be about avoiding everything and stopping to do everything, because I think that's not sustainable in itself, and it's also probably not something that we want. We still want to travel, we still want to fly, but I think what we do is not even as close as important as how we do it. So the mindset is, for me personally, the most important thing. And I do believe that the level of consumption that we've reached these days, and I was like over-exaggerated during the COVID period, where people started buying so many things for their garden, for their home, like the rates were surging, and that also translated into freight prices, by the way. We were seeing record levels of tens of thousands of euros for one container. Now we're back to pre-COVID levels, back to 2,000 euros. So you can imagine like the level of demand that's behind that, that's driving that change. I think, yes, we have to absolutely change our consumption patterns, consume less, consume more responsibly, and optimally higher quality, then things also last longer and you don't have to buy them so many times. And I do also think that, like, of course, it does have an impact on our industry, which to a certain extent might be detrimental, because less consumption means less logistics, less business. But I believe in the long term, this will be much more sustainable, because if customers and end consumers are also willing to pay higher prices because the goods that they buy are higher quality and mean more to them, then also I think the sustainability part will play a much bigger role. My personal favorite are, of course, the intrinsically motivated customers. Those are the ones who actually ask questions. Like, even like we have a lot of customers that have their own sustainability teams. They're super knowledgeable when it comes to their products, but they might not know a lot about logistics. Like we spoke to one of the largest Spanish fashion brands in the sustainability area. they knew everything about sustainability, but for logistics, they were like, yeah, but we don't know anything about it. The sustainability manager, not a logistics manager. So, but still, like those customers, they ask a lot of challenging questions. They want to understand it. And that's where we then also can help them to become educated so they can make the best choice for themselves. That, I think, is the optimal case if we also talk about the continuing mindset change, right? Because it's less about the knowledge and more about the understanding of the system. And then I would say with the commercially motivated customers, you have some that are so, some that are so. But of course, sometimes with these, you have to like draw a line because it can become greenwashing if they just want to do it for the sake of making money. Yeah, but that's a manageable risk, I would say.
Definitely, we see that many different businesses are in a different phase in their sustainability journey, right? So we see that some of the customers, they are just judging how to introduce their own sustainability goals and announce to the market that, let's say, I don't know, by 2040, 2050, they would like to become net zero company. And also we have these customers who recently, and really to be precise, quite many businesses have introduced their sustainability goals in this year and in the previous year, especially after previous COP26, which took place in Glasgow. Quite many big enterprise customers announced their new set of sustainability goals. Quite many customers declared to go with their sustainability journey according SBTi targets, which is also very good for the environment. So yes, these customers, these business partners, we say, which introduced their goals, they recently turned to their business partners to agree how they can reduce their scope 3 emissions. As we generate their scope 3 emissions, we are responsible for that area. That's why we have really currently ongoing series of whiteboarding sessions to really understand how we can help our customers to reduce these emissions, right? And this is what we are doing with quite many different teams. Yeah?
Great. Good to hear.
You were asking the question, and I was remembering some of our meetings before,
Yes.
in which they were basically, come on, Victor, give me electrics right now, tomorrow. So I guess that our main job right now is basically establishing the limits of what is possible right now and what is not. Because the clients, some of them, of course, are very aware of what they want, but it's not possible at the moment. So that's basically our job, establishing what is possible and what's not, and try to work towards what we can do. Yeah.
I think in one of these meetings that Sergio was here too, I asked you for every single way of transport that you discussed today, like, is this possible? Is this possible? And we went through the whole thing. So thank you very much. I'm going to open now to the audience in case you have any questions.
Thank you to the talkers. And I have two questions for the three of you. The first one is to be one of the most ineffective way of transporting is the returns, the trucks with no returns. Mm-hmm. And I am coming from the industry. I work 3 years in UPS, so I know quite well the industry. But I cannot see more than the platforms, some platforms of trying to make the truckers go into different places to when they are coming back to take some merchandise. But is there any possibility of making the transport companies working together as a collaborations and trying to avoid this tremendous lack of ineffective unsustainability due to the returns? Do you understand my question?
Yeah.
Because it's quite amazing. For example, Madrid, La Coruña, Madrid, Barcelona. I mean, the round trips are tremendously no equal, so it's costing a lot of money. And I never saw UPS talking to Federal Express or Seur talking to whatever, but it's a lot of money, a lot of ineffective cost in it. So, do you think that there is anything that you can do from your point of view? This is my first question. And the second is the next one. Regarding the last mile, regarding the greenwashing, regarding your customers, do you think that it's possible not to say to the final users yes to everything they are telling you. I mean, I explain myself. Someone wants the merchandise in 2 hours. Then El Corte Inglés, Amazon, and finally everyone is trying to deliver in 2 hours, which is crazy, by the way. How you can avoid that? By asking really, or by telling them really how ineffective from the cost point of view is to do that in a giant scale, because it's a nonsense. So the two questions.
Okay. Let me start. If you said that you were working at UPS, pleasure. So how to avoid empty coming back trucks, right? So we are connecting what to put in addition to these trucks to get the most utilization of that, right? However, it is a huge challenge. I think that currently we don't have a golden answer, but I like what you just said, that here cooperation between logistic partners would be very needed, right? It's currently not, I would say, solved completely problem. Yeah, definitely. So that's still a challenge for the industry, right? But here definitely, as we said, that we are all in the same boat to reduce emissions. Definitely, cooperation between logistic partners would be definitely needed here.
Just to add to that briefly, I think technology will actually be a key in that, because the complexity in logistics in general, but also in these, like, that's behind these empty runs and in matching different containers and different trucking providers, it's enormous. So it's a lot of data that needs to be handled, and it can only be solved through innovation and technology. And I unfortunately don't know any specific examples, but I know that there's whole companies working on solving these topics because it's so complex. I think also now the problem in the industry, like everyone's saying we need to collaborate rather than compete, but when it comes to sharing data, everyone's still super wary. But there's also new technologies in cryptography and other things that actually enable you to share data without saying whose data it is. So I think, and I hope that there will be big advancements actually coming in the future in these directions.
Nothing else on my side.
In terms of sharing data, I think that recently I've heard that here blockchain could play a bigger role in a near future, because using blockchain you can share data without saying who is sharing, really, right? So this is to your point.
And the second question
was about, okay, here.
2 hours deliveries.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, could you please?
The 2 hour delivery, that it seems that is something that everyone is asking for. I'm not really sure that it is that way, but the companies are insisting in delivering everything in 2 hours, which is crazy. It's costing a tremendous amount of energy and everything.
I think that indeed I use Glovo very much, and you can see that from time to time they increase the pricing, and there is a new commission now, and I think that's the key to stop these deliveries.
And particularly for the e-commerce, we are thinking also opposite currently to introduce lower transportation for our customers, to have higher density, right, in terms of last mile deliveries, because when we have higher density in the area, because customer might wait another day, for example, so then we can consolidate more packages for the particular route, and also to reduce emissions by using this. So here I think that for e-commerce particularly, a new sort of service will be introduced, or is being introduced, and some of our customers are asking their end consumers to wait 1 day longer for goods ordered over internet. But then that footprint which is emitted by transporting these goods will be significantly lower, right? So here we are not talking always about next day delivery, but talking also about adding 1 day to the transportation, but reducing emissions significantly. So it is also about teaching customers how much emissions you produce by transporting by air or by ground.
So we're back to creating visibility so that people can make informed and conscious decisions, right? And in the end, I think like, of course, it's also sort of a marketing hype right now. I mean, in Berlin, we have an app and a company called Gorillas. They used to deliver in 10 minutes. Now it's up to 30, 40, 50 minutes. But I think the only way to change that sort of, like, if it's offered, people will want it. And it's convenient, it's easy. You know, it's the hot shit, you know. But I think the only way to change, to long-lastingly change consumer behavior is through empowering them, through giving them the information so that they can make those informed decisions. So if I think the logistics and the emissions behind it and so on, all of that is visible, and also like the problems that exist with like drivers, how they're being treated, how they're being paid, if all of that becomes visible, people can also base their decisions on all of these factors rather than just convenience.
2 last questions, Luis and Marianne. And yeah, okay. And Sergio. Okay, 3.
So mine is related to packaging. I don't know if this comes a lot to the topic, but I relate it a little bit with transporting things. In terms of like impact and sustainability, it was a little bit carbon-centric conversation, but where does waste stand? And then we are struggling a lot in terms of finding the correct packaging. What's the most sustainable packaging that we can find? And because we don't have the answer, so are logistic companies taking action in this? Is it in their sustainability reports? And well, if we can have a piece of advice on what would be the holy grail of packaging for sustainable companies, that would be very nice. Thank you.
Just for clarification, you're asking about consumer packaging. So the packaging that is being used to send goods then to the customer, like consumer?
Well, yeah, I think everything that involves logistics, like for me, it's like a box or plastic or whatever that you need to put something in and then you will throw that away. And that is just one thing to put it from place A to place B, and that's it.
Maybe I can start. So, I mean, we're a little bit further away from the customer, so packaging plays a smaller role for us. But we also are using like foiling to actually secure pallets. We're using partially cartonage to transport whole cartons. And pallets are also a big thing, right? So one thing that I know, for example, is that like we are offering also to our customers, instead of using wood pallets, to use pellets that are made from recycled paper. And those are much lighter. They're easy to transport. They can be used in exactly the same system. And they're made from recyclable material. So this is something that's happening. Besides that, I'm not an expert on the topic, but I know that there's a lot of research going on in like around mushrooms, for example, because they're very versatile. They can easily transform into all sorts of different shapes. But beyond that, I don't know if you two have more experience with that. I'm a little bit farther away.
So in terms of small pack packaging, so here our customer solutions consultants, they really meet with our customers and consult how to best pack their small goods, right? So we see even that in the e-commerce industry particularly, currently it is kind of new competition, right? So also some businesses are even competing between themselves, how they pack their goods. You can see that these big players already like Nike, Puma, and these kind of big textile companies, they pack their goods really not using any plastic materials. Because when end consumers, when they receive their goods bought over internet, packed in a more sustainable way, they will again order from that internet shop. And recently we introduced eco packaging responsible program, right? So here our customer solutions consultants really consult what corrugated materials could be used, also what kind of cushioning materials in packages. So in theory, we are responsible just to transport the goods from A to B. However, we would like also to consult with customers what they can do in addition, what kind of packages to be used to reduce waste as well. Yeah? And also some customers, they use plastic reusable boxes, right? So here we provide this return supply chain also for these reusable boxes. But this is also supply chain, let's say, used rather not for e-commerce, but for some suppliers where they have that return leg as well in their supply chain. Yeah? So let's say, I would say different needs for different kind of supply chains. Here.
And I'm afraid I have no expertise regarding packaging. Sorry.
We'll be talking a bit more about this tomorrow. We have people from Smurfit Kappa, and I guess they'll cover this topic of packaging. So don't worry, Luis, your needs will be met.
I was wondering, because we are talking about innovation, so technology to solve some of the issues. So I was wondering how your companies work with innovative, impactful startups.
So for us, they're like part of, as I said in the presentation earlier, they're part of our partner landscape. So we work with startups, for example, in the offsetting sphere. We work with startups when we talk about biofuel, we work with a provider that's fairly new. They're maybe not a startup anymore, but they're the most innovative provider when it comes to creating biofuel and then also deploying it in the system. So basically implementing the fuel switch, so to say. And also for visibility, we're working with different technology companies to make the calculation for transport emissions. So for us, they're a natural part of our partner ecosystem. But of course, we're also one of the challengers where, I don't know if we want to say we're a startup, we're probably not anymore by external standards, but like for us, innovation and technology play a huge role because that's what we were founded on. And I think the big frontier that I see right now is the visibility part, because that's where you can start to help customers make more sustainable and conscious decisions, and companies in that sense also. So I think that's for us currently the most important focus.
This is definitely spark of innovation, working with startups, because these are usually small, very agile companies. So we really like to cooperate with startups. And just two examples to be mentioned. Our cargo bikes, which recently we introduced starting from London. They are four-wheel cargo bikes. We call them eQuads. So they have been produced by Fernhay company, which was a startup a few years ago, and they have grown definitely. But yes, this is kind of innovation example. A second one is about, for example, smart charging infrastructure. Also, we developed that with a startup in the UK. So that system helps us to charge our last mile electric fleet in the most efficient way, using as least resources as it is possible. Long story short, how to charge electric vehicles for several hours using less power than it would be expected when you charge it only for a few hours, right? So as we were talking earlier, there is a huge challenge with charging activities for electric vehicles. So also we started from a beginning with that startup, inventing a system which will be reproduced in several or with the most of our centers, how to charge EVs in the most effective way. Yeah? So definitely startups are very important because these are the ones who bring that innovation. Yeah?
And we were considered a startup just a few months ago. So we are now a scale-up. And we work with some startups, for example, regarding that social sustainability that we mentioned before. There is another problem, which is basically some drivers that have their own trucks are getting paid in more than 90 days. And they have to pay for the fuel and for everything on their own. So we are trying to pay them instantly, and we are collaborating with different startups to do that, but mainly fintechs. Yeah.
So thank you so much for this inspirational speech that you have. Sorry, Víctor, for bothering you the last year with the lecture electrical vehicle. I have just one question. It's a question that several times Cristina and myself has discussed it. It's about compensation. Artur, you were speaking about zero emissions and compensation as well, but we saw that in the COP27 a couple of months ago, the idea is not to change the rules to be more efficient, it's just to compensate to be neutral instead of to be at zero emissions. What is your personal opinion about to compensate your emissions? And also, the compensation if we are polluting here in Europe and compensating the other part of the world, so it's polluting in Spain, in Madrid, in Valencia, and have a compensation plan in South Africa, Peru, or what else?
That was one of our projects, if you remember that. But even if compensations are a good vehicle, the risks for greenwashing is very high, because you have to make sure that even if they are certified, you have to make sure that the future of the project is exactly as the plan that they have. So it's not enough just by putting trees. The trees have to grow, and even if they have certifications, it's not very reliable.
Yeah, you definitely need additional due diligence. So in general, I would say offsetting is neither good nor bad. It's a necessary part of the whole puzzle. It's not the ultimate solution, for sure not. That's also like we started with offsetting because at the time there was no way to actually decarbonize the transportation across continents. But that's why we started with it, and we were very clearly saying like it's just the first step and just a way to like buy us some time, but still take action. Because I think that closing that knowledge action gap, like knowing we need to do something, but then not being able to do anything, that's also not good for like, it doesn't feel right. So I would say rather get started with it than not do anything. You have to be really careful about what kind of projects you choose. And I would also say certifications alone are not enough. You have to really go beyond and do additional checks. You can work with partners for that. It's definitely possible. But then it can be a part of the solution. But of course, once emission reduction solutions become available, those need to be prioritized because we need to reduce emissions if we want to even have a chance at curbing climate change. That's not going to happen with offsetting. But the good thing about offsetting on the other side also is that while yes, we somehow transfer the problem somewhere else, but that also means that we bring financing and money into places of the earth where the impact of climate change is actually the highest, even though they didn't produce it, right? The impacts come from the West, but the South will feel it much more strongly. So it does bring money into these areas. Also, the science around that is proven. But the whole greenwashing side is, I think, like bringing a lot of insecurity into the picture. So again, the how is really important also with that.
Yes, so offsetting is just easier, right? But the key is how to mitigate emissions, right? That's why in our fleet we are really because we have offsetting in our offering for our customers, right? So we do offering this. However, we are focused more how to make our entire supply chain cleaner, right? That's why we are trying different kind of fuels, also electrification of our fleet, because here is the key, how to make the whole transportation cleaner. So that's more difficult, but this is the goal.
Needs to be a clear priority.
So thank you very much for this.